Ian McKelvey, I understand this is a 5-minute call.
It is, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to share it with Stuart Smith, Mr. Speaker. But before I
share the 5 minutes? Or?
No. I'll share the 10 minutes that would have been mine, where I'm more important than I am, Mr. Speaker. I just want to... and I'm now going to waste another minute on New Zealand First, Mr. Speaker, because they've spent their life accusing the rest of this House of stealing policy. And I noticed in the last moment or so, the member went right back to the 1950s to steal a bit of government policy around social housing. Amazing how deep they will dig to find some policy to put up, because it's exactly the policy that local government had in place for many years. Speaker, I want to talk about a number of things in this budget, but I really want to talk about the result of, initially about the result of the latest, I guess, agreement between the Labour Party and the Greens. And I want to talk about the two things that I think the government has the upper hand on with respect to their historical...
A point of order, Dennis O'Rourke.
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. The relevancy of an agreement, a political agreement between two of the political parties, has got nothing whatsoever to do with the budget.
Well, I was speaking to the point of order, Ian McKelvey.
Mr. Speaker, I wasn't able to expand on my point.
Well, I think both members are absolutely right. But unfortunately for Mr. O'Rourke, the budget debate is one of the broadest, and what we've seen within it, including from members on his own side, are some pretty general discussions about policy and politics in general, and that has been the tradition, and I'm happy for that to continue. Ian McKelvey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
A
point of order, sir. Just a clarification.
Yeah, Dr. Kennedy Graham.
Sir, can you give the House an assurance that the scope with which the Speaker can address the memorandum is confined to within the context of the budget, any reference to the budget?
No.
Point of order.
A point of order.
Can you please explain to us why that would be the case?
Well. First of all, I cannot at any stage guarantee what a particular member says, but what I have already indicated is that the budget is a broad-ranging debate and has always included topical political issues. Members from both sides of the House on occasions are not particularly comfortable with that, but it is part of the arrangement. It is effectively the budget debate, as with the address and reply, have effectively become general debates, and what we've seen in the House over the last few days have been a number of speeches from both sides of the House that have only made passing reference to the details of the budget. Ian McKelvey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. All I wanted to say, Mr. Speaker, was that the National Government, through its support from the Maori Party and ACT New Zealand, now firmly own the environmental space. That was clearly demonstrated by James Shaw's questions of the Minister of Tourism today, where he was desperately trying to claim back the space around the river or freshwater policy, which, of course, this government is leading the way on and has put in a significant investment into over the last few years. Also, through the reforms started by Minister Bennett and continued by Minister Tolley, the National Government has firmly claimed a very important space in the social piece of our community. This is a responsible budget, Mr. Speaker. It's gone a long way to reinforcing the work of the past 8 years by the Minister of Finance, Bill English, and I think it's set the country up for a very strong next few years. It's going to make a big difference to the way we're able to plan our next few years. It's going to make a big difference to the way the country runs in the next few years, the way we're able to support those who need supporting in this country, and the way we're able to establish and encourage business in this country. And I want to speak briefly about that, because there's a very good reason why in New Zealand we have to, I guess, through the Minister of Tourism, the Ministry of Tourism, NZTE, MPI, and other agencies, why we have to go beyond the norm to ensure our country is recognised internationally. The reason we have to do that is because business in New Zealand isn't big enough to compete, on the whole it's not big enough, to compete internationally without some significant I guess, input from the things that make New Zealand work so well. And I quote that, I use that term because if you look at New Zealand business, really only Air New Zealand and Fonterra of our New Zealand companies are in a position where they're able to significantly impact on the world market for New Zealand. So it's most important that the government invests strongly in this area, that it helps our businesses and manufacturers to find a place offshore where they can do really well. We also have a very important role to play in assisting this through our embassies, trade missions, trade envoys, and of course, as I said earlier, NZTE. So I think that the budget gives a strong message to those organisations that we need to grow New Zealand's opportunity in business. And just on the topic of jobs, and we've heard numerous times during this debate the number of jobs that have been created in the last 3 years, the number of jobs that will be created in the next 3 years, some 170,000. And I just wanted to make the point that it's most important for particularly our primary industries sector that technology and science and research move very quickly. And of course the government's very large investment, some $411 million into this sector over the next 3 years, is going to make a significant difference. In fact, it's $1.6 billion by 2020. Will make a significant difference in this area. But I also want to point out that does not mean that we have less people in employment in New Zealand. And agriculture in particular will ensure that we have the opportunity for people to get involved in the sector that historically didn't have that opportunity because manual work was basically, that was the prime role, I guess, we played in agriculture. That's changed completely. So the increased budget for science and innovation is going to make a massive difference to New Zealand. I want to talk very briefly about public infrastructure and the spend in tourism in New Zealand, which of course in the Rangitikei electorate makes a significant difference, particularly in the north of my electorate where we have cycle trails, a couple of major cycle trails, and of course we're involved in the Wanganui, or Mountains to the Sea cycle trail, which goes down the Wanganui River, and also the $12 million in this budget that's being invested in infrastructure to assist with tourism, and that of course was the subject of a question in the House today as well. And it's going to be most important to New Zealand's opportunity that we continue to invest strongly in the tourism sector, strongly in the smaller councils' ability in New Zealand to put infrastructure in place for, I guess, a very strongly growing tourism industry. And of course, often in New Zealand, the tourism industry grows in places where we have the least ability to pay for the infrastructure required. And that particularly again applies to the north of my electorate, where what historically was a major winter sport area has now become a major summer sport area. And of course, that puts a whole lot of different, I guess, emphasis on infrastructure. I want to quickly talk about the environment, because the environment to all in the primary sector in New Zealand is hugely important. And the $100 million that this government's put into fresh water and water quality is really important to us, particularly in my electorate with the Manawatu River and the Kiwatea streams, which have had a significant help from community-based organisations arranging them. So, Mr. Speaker, I have great pleasure in supporting this budget.